The morning sun peeked over Somerset, Pennsylvania, casting a warm glow on the quiet town known for its idyllic charm. But beneath the surface of tranquility, a dark story of power, obsession, and tragedy was about to unravel, a story that would shake the community to its core. Lacey Eckert was the kind of young woman people admired from afar. At 20 years old, she was a talented artist with a shy demeanor, known for her serene landscapes that adorned the walls of Somerset's downtown gallery. Her peaceful spirit was mirrored in her close-knit family, especially in her bond with her father, Sheriff Tom Eckert, a man whose dedication to justice and morality inspired Lacey's gentle outlook on life. Her world, however, collided with one of Somerset's most influential figures, Judge Jerry Blackwood. At 53, Blackwood was a man of considerable charm and authority. But behind his polished exterior was a darker side, a relentless determination to claim what he desired. When Blackwood met Lacey at a civic fundraiser in early 2014, the powerful judge became fixated on the young artist. At first, his interest seemed harmless, a passing appreciation for her talent. But soon, his admiration morphed into something far more sinister. Blackwood began to appear wherever Lacey went, at her favorite art supply store, her gallery openings, and even the small studio she rented on Main Street. He positioned himself as a mentor, promising scholarships and connections in exchange for what he wanted: control over her. Lacey, uncomfortable with his persistent advances, tried to keep her distance. She politely declined his invitations, brushed off his late-night calls, and even avoided the bouquets of flowers that appeared at her door. Yet Blackwood's obsession only deepened. Feeling trapped, Lacey confided in her friend Tracey Wheeler, admitting the judge's attention left her uneasy. But with his reputation and power looming over her, she struggled to find a way out. By June 23, 2014, after months of relentless pressure, Lacey made a choice she would later regret. Blackwood summoned her to his office, and exhausted from his persistence, she gave in. The encounter left her conflicted between guilt and the suffocating sense that Blackwood now had an even tighter grip on her life. This emotional turmoil spiraled in the days that followed, further isolating Lacey. Her vibrant art seemed to lose its color, and her once bright spirit dimmed. 6 days later, the nightmare reached its tragic climax. On the morning of June 29, 2014, the usual hum of Somerset was shattered. Mary Chaplinsky, a housekeeper from Minute Maids, arrived at Lacey's apartment to start her weekly cleaning. The silence inside felt unnatural. Calling out for Lacey yielded no response. Uneasy, Chaplinsky opened the bathroom door and stumbled upon a sight that would haunt her forever. Lacey lay lifeless in the bathtub, her body marred by deep stab wounds. Blood tinged the water around her, and the room, strangely pristine, bore none of the chaos one might expect. Makeup brushes and toiletries remained perfectly in place, untouched by the violence. Trembling, Chaplinsky fled to the lobby and called 911. By 7 a.m., Somerset police had cordoned off the apartment. Detective Sam Reynolds, a seasoned investigator known for his methodical approach, led the charge. At his side were Officer Julie Hartman and forensic specialist Ethel Chu, who meticulously examined the scene. Reynolds was struck by the eerie orderliness of the crime. No signs of forced entry, no disturbance in Lacey's belongings, just the gruesome scene in the bathroom. Chu's findings deepened the mystery. The room had been wiped clean of fingerprints, with every surface carefully sanitized. The murder had all the hallmarks of premeditation, orchestrated to conceal the killer's tracks. As news of Lacey's death spread, shockwaves rippled through Somerset. The town's golden girl, a beacon of artistry and innocence, had been torn from their lives in a crime as chilling as it was calculated. The investigation would uncover unsettling truths about obsession, power, and the darkness that can hide behind even the most respected faces. Detective Reynolds moved through the bathroom with deliberate care, a practiced hand jotting down every observation in his notepad. His eyes lingered on the arrangement of Lacey's belongings, her makeup kit, hairbrush, and other personal items neatly placed, as if untouched by the violence that had taken her life. On the countertop lay her phone, its screen dark, positioned almost too perfectly. Nothing in the room suggested theft. Everything appeared in its rightful place. It was a scene that puzzled him, one where the absence of chaos told a louder story than if there had been signs of a struggle. The crime lab's preliminary findings added another layer to the mystery. Lacey had not been sexually assaulted, removing a common motive for such brutality. Reynolds felt a growing sense that whoever had done this wasn't motivated by impulse, but by something far darker, something personal. Forensic specialist Ethel Chu, a veteran with years of experience examining crime scenes, worked methodically nearby. He crouched low, adjusting his high-resolution camera to capture every angle of the pristine bathroom. The sterile stillness unnerved even Chu, who'd seen his share of unsettling crime scenes. Switching to an alternative light source, he searched for hidden evidence, bodily fluids, fingerprints, or any trace material that might have been missed at first glance. But so far, the bathroom was disturbingly clean, as though the killer had taken the time to erase their presence. In the next room, Officer Hartman sat with Mary Chaplinsky, the housekeeper who had discovered the body. Chaplinsky's hands trembled as she clutched a tissue, her voice cracking as she described the eerie silence of Lacey's apartment that morning. "It was too quiet," she said, her eyes darting nervously toward the bathroom door. "I called out for her." But nothing. She hesitated before continuing, her voice barely above a whisper. "When I opened the door, she was just lying there. I couldn't even move. I just ran." Reynolds paused to listen as Hartman asked follow-up questions, taking note of the genuine shock in Chaplinsky's demeanor. Her pale complexion and unsteady breathing told him this scene would haunt her long after the investigation was over. He made a mental note of her account, knowing even the smallest detail might prove critical later. Outside the apartment, the growing commotion contrasted starkly with the somber intensity of the investigation inside. Neighbors had gathered in small clusters, exchanging whispers and speculations as the morning unfolded. The first reporters from the Somerset Daily Times arrived, snapping photos of the apartment complex and jotting down statements from anyone willing to talk. Most neighbors claimed to know little about Lacey's personal life, but that didn't stop the rumors from spreading. Some speculated about a robbery gone wrong, while others hinted at a darker, more personal vendetta. Reynolds, accustomed to such scenes, shut out the noise. He focused instead on the details, directing his team to comb the apartment's entrance and windows for evidence of forced entry. But there was none. The locks remained intact, and nothing suggested a break-in. It appeared Lacey had willingly let her killer in, a thought that made the case even more unsettling. Back in the bathroom, the air was heavy with a tense silence, broken only by the soft clicks of Chu's camera and the occasional rustling of investigators at work. Reynolds took a step back to survey the scene as a whole. The room's meticulous staging gnawed at him. This wasn't the work of an amateur or someone acting on impulse. The precision suggested a calculated effort, likely from someone who knew Lacey well, someone who had studied her habits, gained her trust, and exploited it to devastating effect. As the investigation pressed forward, the weight of the case bore down on Reynolds. He knew instinctively that this crime would be far from simple to unravel. Somewhere within the quiet chaos of Lacey's apartment lay answers to the burning question: who could have harbored such a consuming darkness, and why had they chosen this young, gentle artist as their victim? As the investigation continued, Sheriff Eckert was furious about learning about the relationship with his daughter. He insisted justice must be brought to whoever had killed Lacey. The sheriff vehemently denied any inappropriate relationships or romantic rivalry with Judge Blackwood, insisting their clashes were purely political. To him, the divide between their ideologies was enough to explain their animosity. However, investigators couldn't dismiss the undercurrents of tension between the two men. Political disagreements aside, the personal and professional rivalry between the sheriff and the judge hinted at a more intricate dynamic. As authorities worked to unravel the truth, these unresolved hostilities added a new layer of complexity to the case. With Lacey's tragic death casting suspicion on both men, investigators faced mounting pressure to determine whether their enmity played a role in the murder. In the pre-dawn hours of July 2nd, 2014, a breakthrough came when Officer Julie Hartman, combing through Judge Blackwood's chambers in the Somerset County Courthouse, stumbled upon a shocking clue. While sifting through case documents, she noticed a small, unmarked flash drive hidden among the clutter. Intrigued, she plugged it into her laptop, only to uncover a trove of explicit and damning content. The flash drive contained intimate recordings of Blackwood and Lacey, confirming their rumored affair. But these weren't just any recordings, they were invasive and deeply unsettling. Among the files were videos showing Blackwood making manipulative and possessive remarks. In one clip, recorded just a day before her death, the judge was seen arguing heatedly with Lacey in his office. His tone was domineering, demanding that she cut ties with others and focus solely on him, reminding her of the favors he had done for her career. To the investigators, these recordings revealed a disturbing pattern of control and obsession. What had once been a case of competing motives suddenly shifted focus, casting Blackwood in a far more sinister light. Digging deeper into Blackwood's past, investigators uncovered a troubling history. Lacey wasn't the first young woman to fall victim to the judge's manipulative tactics. Interviews with other women painted a picture of a man who repeatedly used his power to exploit and dominate. Amanda Rivers, a former law clerk, recounted how Blackwood retaliated against her rejection of his advances by humiliating her in the workplace, even sending her inappropriate gifts. Similarly, Sarah Mitchell described being followed by Blackwood for weeks after declining his overtures, his car often idling near her home late at night. These allegations, though previously dismissed or buried, began to take on new weight in light of Lacey's murder. Blackwood's charm and authority had long shielded him from scrutiny, but now his carefully constructed facade was crumbling. Investigators uncovered old case records suggesting a pattern: young women facing minor legal troubles who received inexplicable leniency in exchange for favors. A journal found in Blackwood's office provided a chilling insight into his psyche. In its pages, he had meticulously chronicled his interactions with numerous women, documenting private conversations, his growing infatuations, and his attempts to maintain control over their lives. As these revelations came to light, the portrait of Blackwood shifted from a respected figure to a man driven by dangerous obsessions. His fixation on Lacey, coupled with his history of predatory behavior, placed him squarely in the crosshairs of the investigation. Yet the deeper detectives probed, the more questions arose about how this web of power, rivalry, and manipulation could have culminated in such a horrific act. The police quickly realized that Lacey Eckert's tragic death was not an isolated incident, but rather part of a far larger and more disturbing pattern of manipulation and abuse that had been carefully hidden for years. As investigators peeled back the layers of Lacey's life and death, they began to uncover the chilling extent of Judge Jerry Blackwood's use of his authority to exploit vulnerable young women. What initially appeared to be a single, senseless murder soon turned into a complex investigation into Blackwood's past, his obsession with Lacey, and his deeply troubling history with other women in the community. The search for Lacey's killer would reveal a dark web of manipulation, power, and deceit that shocked the town and left them reeling. In early July 2014, detectives received an unexpected tip that pointed them to Tracey Wheeler, Lacey's longtime friend and, as it turned out, her former lover. Tracey, a 26-year-old artist, had connections to both Judge Blackwood and Sheriff Tom Eckert, making her an intriguing and puzzling figure in the case. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that Tracey's relationship with Lacey, as well as her involvement with both the sheriff and the judge, ran much deeper and more complicated than anyone had first realized. And through interviews with members of the Somerset community, detectives learned that Tracey had been in a sexual relationship with Lacey for several months before their breakup. The dissolution of their relationship had reportedly been tumultuous for Tracey, especially since Lacey had quickly moved on and begun an intimate relationship with Judge Blackwood. As the investigation dug deeper, it was revealed that Tracey's emotional and personal ties to both Blackwood and Sheriff Eckert were far more tangled than anyone had suspected. What seemed like a straightforward love triangle was a much more intricate web of romantic rivalry, jealousy, and unresolved feelings. Adding to the web of suspicion, investigators found a draft email on Tracey's computer, in which she vented her frustration with Lacey's so-called snotty rich attitude. The email accused Lacey of using people to get what she wanted, a sentiment that resonated with the growing belief that Tracey had been deeply hurt by Lacey's actions. In this context, Tracey appeared less as a mere bystander in the love triangle and more as someone who had been pushed to the edge by jealousy, anger, and unresolved feelings of betrayal. As detectives connected the dots, they began to formulate a troubling picture. Tracey was not just a woman caught in the middle of a complicated romantic situation. She was a woman scorned, deeply wounded by Lacey's actions and her ability to secure the affections of both powerful men. The possibility that these emotions had driven her to murder was increasingly plausible. Detectives began to explore the theory that Tracey, in her desperation to reclaim control over her life and regain the attention of Judge Blackwood and Sheriff Eckert, had taken matters into her own hands in a violent and irreversible way. The situation became even more dire when investigators uncovered further evidence that Tracey had arranged to meet Lacey at Lacey's apartment on the night of the murder. Tracey claimed that she wanted to clear the air with Lacey, but as the conversation progressed, it became clear that old wounds had not healed. During their meeting, Tracey confronted Lacey about her growing relationship with Judge Blackwood, accusing her of betrayal and of stealing away the attention of the men who had once been interested in Tracey herself. The argument quickly escalated, and in a moment of intense emotion, Tracey lost control. According to Tracey's later confession, she became consumed with a mixture of rage and hurt, and in a fit of fury, she grabbed a heavy glass paperweight from Lacey's desk and struck her. Lacey, taken by surprise and stunned by the blow, collapsed to the floor. But Tracey wasn't done. Driven by an overwhelming need to silence Lacey once and for all, she attacked again, delivering fatal blows that ultimately took Lacey's life. Afterward, Tracey claimed she felt a strange mix of satisfaction and horror, as if she had taken matters into her own hands and avenged her hurt but at the cost of her humanity. Tracey left the scene, carefully wiping her hands clean of evidence and later discarding her blood-stained clothes in a dumpster behind a local Walmart. But her actions did not go unnoticed. Surveillance footage placed Tracey near Lacey's apartment on the night of the murder, which directly contradicted her earlier alibi. Furthermore, the police recovered the paperweight from the scene, and it was found to have Tracey's fingerprints all over it. With this concrete evidence, detectives were able to piece together the final details of the crime, leading to Tracey's arrest on July 10th. During her interrogation, Tracey's bravado began to crumble. Once defiant, she now faced the weight of the evidence against her. Realizing that her story was falling apart, she finally confessed to the murder, providing specific details that only the killer could have known. The confession marked the end of a lengthy investigation, but it left the community in shock. Tracey Wheeler, once seen as a quiet artist and a friend of the deceased, had turned out to be the very person responsible for Lacey's death. The arrest of Tracey Wheeler made headlines and shocked the local community, which had once viewed her as a gentle soul. The revelations about her jealousy, manipulation, and the complex web of relationships she had tangled herself in seemed too horrific to be true. Yet the evidence spoke for itself, and the case that had once seemed so open-ended was now closed. At her trial in March 2016, Tracey's defense team made an unexpected move, offering a feminist defense in an attempt to explain her actions. Her lawyer, Gloria Fremont, argued that Tracey had been a victim of a societal structure that forced women to compete for the attention of powerful men. Fremont contended that Tracey's jealousy and resulting violence were the consequences of a culture that valued women only about their relationships with men of stature. According to Fremont, it was this social pressure, not personal animosity, that led Tracey to murder Lacey. The prosecution, led by Thomas Reed, dismissed this defense as a desperate attempt to avoid responsibility for her actions. He argued that Tracey's actions were premeditated and driven by personal jealousy, not societal influence. He emphasized the calculated nature of her crime, pointing to her long-standing resentment and bitterness toward Lacey. After weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for 3 days before returning a verdict of guilty on charges of second-degree murder. Tracey was sentenced to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom was silent as the judge delivered the sentence, and the media quickly began to analyze the broader implications of the case, focusing on gender dynamics, power, and the role of jealousy in violent crimes. While the case brought a sense of closure to some, it left the community deeply affected, continuing to spark conversations about the nature of jealousy, love, and betrayal. The lives of those involved, Judge Blackwood, Sheriff Eckert, and Tracey Wheeler, had all been irrevocably altered by Lacey Eckert's tragic death, and the aftermath of her murder would continue to haunt them for years to come. Stay glued to this channel, share your thoughts on the story, like and comment. Until next time when we bring you more crime stories, stay vigilant. Thank you.